The baby wasn't breathing. That is the first thing you need to know. When Elena Vance lifted the lid of that freezing, rusted dumpster in a dark New York alleyway, she didn't find trash. She found a tragedy wrapped in a filthy blanket. Most people would have called the police. Most people would have walked away. But Elena didn't know that the shivering infant in her arms was the heir to the most dangerous criminal empire on the East Coast. She didn't know that by saving this child, she was painting a target on her own back. And she certainly didn't expect that the man coming to hunt her down, the ruthlessly handsome Mafia Don Lorenzo Moretti, wouldn't just want his daughter back. He would want her. What happens when a penniless maid looks a killer in the eye? The answer shocked the entire underworld. The wind on 44th Street cut through Elena Vance's threadbare coat like a serrated knife. It was 3 in the morning, the kind of New York darkness that felt heavy, wet, and unforgiving. Eleanor adjusted the strap of her purse, her shoulders aching. She had just finished a 14-hour shift scrubbing floors and changing sheets at the Chatsworth Luxury Hotel, one of the most expensive establishments in Manhattan. Her hands were raw, the skin cracked from harsh detergents. For all her labor, she had $62 in tips and a paycheck that was already spent on rent for her tiny basement apartment in Queens. Elena didn't have big dreams anymore. At 24, her dreams had been whittled down to necessities, heat food, and keeping her head down. She took the shortcut through the service alley behind the hotel to get to the subway station. It was a vile stretch of pavement, smelling of rotting vegetables and stale beer, usually occupied by rats. The heavy metal dumpsters stood like sentinels in the gloom. As she hurried past the largest dumpster, intending to keep her head down, a sound stopped her. It wasn't the scuttle of a rat. It wasn't the hiss of steam. It was a whimper. Eleanor froze. The rain was coming down harder now, a freezing sleet that rattled against the metal lids. She told herself to keep walking. Don't get involved, Elena. Nothing good happens in alleys at 3 a.m. But the sound came again, a weak, strangled cry. It sounded like a kitten or, against every survival instinct she had honed growing up in the foster system. Elena turned back. She stepped toward the green dumpster, her heart hammering against her ribs. The lid was slightly ajar, propped open by an overflowing black bag. She reached out her trembling fingers, gripping the cold, wet metal, and shoved the lid back. The stench hit her first coffee grounds and spoiled seafood. But then her eyes adjusted to the shadows. Resting atop a pile of shredded cardboard boxes, perilously close to a jagged edge of rusty metal, was a bundle. It wasn't a bag. It was a bundle wrapped in what looked like a very expensive but ruined cashmere shawl. Elena gasped, the sound tearing from her throat. She reached in, ignoring the grime that coated her sleeves, and pulled the bundle out. The weight of it was terrifyingly familiar. It was a baby. "Oh my God," Eleanor whispered, her breath misting in the air. "Oh my God, no." She pulled the shawl back. A baby girl no more than 6 months old stared up at her with glazed, feverish eyes. The child's skin was pale, almost blue in the harsh light of the street lamp above. She wasn't crying loudly anymore. She was too weak. She was shivering so violently that her tiny teeth were chattering. Elena panicked. She looked around the alley. Empty. Windows dark. "Who does this?" she screamed internally. Who throws a human being away like garbage? She checked the baby for injuries. No blood, but the heat radiating from the tiny body was alarming. A high fever. "It's okay," Shh, it's okay, Elena murmured, unbuttoning her own coat and tucking the damp bundle against the warmth of her chest. I've got you. She fumbled for her phone. Her thumb hovered over 911. But she hesitated. Elena knew the system. She knew the police in this precinct. If she called them now, they would take the baby. That was fine. But they would detain Elena. They would ask questions she couldn't answer. Why were you here? Did you put her there? Are you on drugs? And the baby? The baby would go into the system. An emergency foster home. Elena remembered the emergency homes, the smell of bleach and neglect. This baby was sick. Deathly sick. If she waited for the cops to arrive, fill out paperwork, and wait for a social worker, this little girl might freeze to death or seize from the fever. I can't wait, Elena decided. I have to get you warm. She made a choice that would change the trajectory of her life forever. She didn't call the police. Instead, she wrapped her coat tighter around the child, shielded the baby's face from the biting wind, and ran. She ran all the way to the subway. She endured the suspicious glares of late-night commuters as the baby whimpered beneath her coat. She rode the train for 40 minutes to Queens, praying to a god she hadn't spoken to in years. When she finally burst into her small apartment, she didn't collapse. She went into survival mode. She cranked the radiator up until it hissed. She filled a bowl with lukewarm water. She peeled the filthy, expensive cashmere off the baby. Underneath the baby was wearing a onesie. It was stained, but Eleanor noticed the label immediately. Gucci. This wasn't a poor woman's unwanted child. This was a rich baby. A baby who had been discarded. As Elena gently sponged the feverish sweat off the baby's forehead, she saw something else. Around the baby's neck was a thin platinum chain. Dangling from it was a small pendant, a family crest, a lion holding a dagger. Elena frowned. She had seen that crest before. Somewhere on the news, or maybe in the papers, the rich guests at the hotel left behind. The baby let out a soft sigh, her eyes closing as the warmth of the room finally seeped into her bones. Elena prepared a bottle of diluted milk, she didn't have formula, and carefully fed the child. You're safe, Elena whispered, stroking the baby's dark curls. I don't know who threw you away, little one, but they're never touching you again. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in her rocking chair, holding the stranger's child, watching the chest rise and fall. Elena thought she had saved a baby. She didn't realize she had just abducted the daughter of Lorenzo Moretti, the capo dei capi of the New York Mafia, and she didn't know that across the city a man was currently executing his own security guards for losing her. The next morning, the city of New York woke up to chaos. Elena didn't know about it yet. She had fallen asleep in the chair around 6 a.m. The baby finally sleeping peacefully in a makeshift crib made from a laundry basket and soft towels. When Elena woke up, it was noon. Panic surged through her. "Oh no!" she gasped. "My shift." She was supposed to be at the Chatsworth by 10 a.m. She grabbed her phone. 7 missed calls from her supervisor, Mrs. Gable. Elena dialed back, her hands shaking. "Mrs. Gable, I'm so sorry I had an emerge." "Don't bother Vance." Mrs. Gable's voice was ice cold. "You're a no-show. We don't do no-shows at the Chatsworth. Don't come in. You're fired. Wait, please, I need this job. Click. Elena stared at the phone. Fired. She looked at the baby. The little girl was awake now, looking around the shabby apartment with wide hazel eyes. The fever had broken. She looked remarkably better, though still pale. "Well," Elena said, her voice trembling, "it's just you and me now." She turned on the small TV in the corner to check the weather, needing to distract herself from the rising panic of rent being due in 3 days. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't the weather. It was a breaking news banner in bright red. Manhunt underway for missing heiress. Elena froze. On the screen was a photo, a studio portrait of a baby. The same dark curls, the same hazel eyes. The caption read, "Sofia Moretti, 6 months old. Daughter of Lorenzo Moretti, CEO of Moretti Shipping." The news anchor's voice was grave. "Police are calling this a high-stakes kidnapping. Lorenzo Moretti has offered a $5 million reward for information leading to her safe return. Sources say the child was taken from her stroller in Central Park yesterday evening." Elena looked from the TV to the baby in the laundry basket. "Sophia," she whispered. "Your name is Sophia." But then the fear hit her. Central Park. That was a lie. Elena found her in a dumpster behind a hotel in Hell's Kitchen. If she was taken from the park, why was she in a dumpster miles away? And Moretti Shipping. Everyone in New York knew that Moretti Shipping was a polite way of saying the Mafia. Lorenzo Moretti wasn't just a CEO, he was the Don. Elena's stomach dropped. If she walked into a police station now with the Mafia Don's daughter holding a baby that had been missing for 24 hours, they wouldn't see a savior. They would see a kidnapper. Or worse, if the people who threw Sophia in the dumpster were inside the family. Bringing her back might get the baby killed. "I can't go to the police," Elena realized, pacing the small room. "And I can't stay here. If they find me with her," she needed money, she needed supplies, and she needed to figure out how to get this baby to her father without getting killed in the process. She looked at the platinum necklace around Sophia's neck. The crest. "I have to find him," Elena decided. "I have to find Lorenzo Moretti directly. I can't trust anyone else." It was a suicide mission. But looking at Sophia's innocent face, Elena knew she couldn't leave this child to the wolves. 2 days later, Elena was desperate. The milk was running out. She had bought diapers with her last $10. She knew where Lorenzo Moretti would be. The tabloids were obsessively covering his movements. He was currently tearing the city apart, but tonight he was scheduled to make a grim appearance at a charity gala at, ironically, the Chatsworth Hotel. The very place Elena had been fired from. It was a long-standing commitment he couldn't break without showing weakness to his rivals. Elena still had her uniform. She still had her service key card. In the chaos of being fired over the phone, she hadn't returned it. "I'm sorry, Sophia," Elena whispered. She strapped the baby into a cheap carrier, hiding her under her oversized coat. "We're going to the Lion's Den." Getting into the hotel was easy. The staff entrance security guard, old Mike, waved her in, assuming she was working the night shift. He didn't know she was fired. Elena navigated the back corridors, her heart thumping against the baby's chest. The gala was in the grand ballroom. She didn't want to go to the ballroom. She wanted to go to the penthouse suite. That was where Moretti would be staying before the event. She took the service elevator up. The lift shuddered and groaned. Ding. Floor 40. The penthouse. The doors opened, Elena stepped out and immediately slammed into a wall of muscle. She gasped, stumbling back. Standing in front of her were two men who looked like they were carved out of granite. They wore earpieces and suits that cost more than Eleanor's life earnings. "Wrong floor, housekeeping," one of them growled, his hand moving to the inside of his jacket. "No," Eleanor said, her voice shaking but her chin high. "I'm not here to clean. I'm here to see Mr. Moretti." The guards laughed. A cold, cruel sound. "The boss isn't seeing visitors, especially not maids. Get back in the elevator before I throw you down the shaft." "I have something of his," Elena said loudly. The guard grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "Listen to me, you little rat. Let her speak." The voice came from down the hall. It wasn't loud, but it possessed a terrifying authority that instantly silenced the guards. Elena looked up. Standing at the end of the corridor was Lorenzo Moretti. He was taller than he looked on TV. He was wearing a black tuxedo, his tie undone, looking like a man who hadn't slept in a week. His face was a mask of cold fury, his jaw set hard, dark circles bruising the skin under his eyes. He was devastatingly handsome, but in the way a storm is beautiful, deadly, and destructive. He walked toward them, his movements predatory. "You have 5 seconds to explain why. You are disturbing me," Lorenzo said, his voice low and dangerous. "Before I have you removed. Permanently." Elena's throat went dry. The guard was still hurting her arm. "I found something," she stammered. "In the trash, behind the hotel." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. He looked bored, ready to dismiss her. "I don't care about your trash. You should," Elena said, anger flaring up to mask her fear. She reached for the buttons of her coat. The guards drew their guns instantly. Hands where I can see them." "Wait!" Elena screamed. She ripped the coat open. Silence fell over the hallway. Heavy, suffocating silence. Strapped to Elena's chest, blinking in the bright hallway lights, was Sophia. The baby saw Lorenzo. She let out a happy gurgle and reached a chubby hand toward him. "Dada." Lorenzo Moretti froze. The color drained from his face. The ruthless Mafia Don. The man who made grown men weep for mercy. Looked as if he had been punched in the gut. He stared at the baby. Then he stared at Elena. His shock vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated, murderous rage. He lunged forward, closing the distance in a second. He didn't hug her. He didn't thank her. He grabbed Elena by the throat and pinned her against the wall, his hand tightening around her windpipe, avoiding the baby by inches. "Where did you take her?" he hissed, his eyes burning like black fire. "Who are you working for?" "Speak!" Elena clawed at his hand, gasping for air. She had saved his daughter, and now he was going to kill her for it. The silence in the hallway was broken only by the terrified wail of the baby. Sophia, sensing the violence and the sudden aggression, began to scream, her tiny hands clutching at the air. That sound was the only thing that saved Elena Vance's life. At the sound of his daughter's cry, the murderous haze in Lorenzo Moretti's eyes fractured. His grip on Elena's throat loosened just a fraction enough for her to gasp in a lungful of air. "She's scared." Elena choked out, tears streaming down her face. "You're scaring her." Lorenzo looked down at the baby, strapped to Elena's chest. Sophia was red-faced, crying, but she was alive. She was here. He slowly released Elena, though his body remained coiled like a viper, ready to strike again. "Inside." He commanded, his voice a low growl that vibrated in the floorboards. "Now." The two guards shoved Elena forward. She stumbled into the penthouse suite. It was a world away from her basement apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, marble floors and furniture that cost more than an entire neighborhood block in Queens. But to Elena, it felt like a prison cell. Lorenzo slammed the heavy oak door shut, locking out the world. He turned to the guards. "Nobody enters. If anyone comes near this door, shoot them. I don't care if it's the police commissioner." "Yes, boss." The guards nodded, taking positions by the door, their hands resting on their holsters. Lorenzo turned back to Elena. He didn't look like a relieved father. He looked like an interrogator. "Unstrap her. Give her to me." Slowly. Elena's hands shook so badly, she fumbled with the clasps of the cheap carrier. "I didn't take her," she whispered, the words tumbling out. "I swear. I found her." "Liar," Lorenzo spat. He snatched Sophia from Elena's arms. The moment the baby was in his arms, his demeanor shifted instantly. He cradled the child with a desperate tenderness, burying his face in her dark curls, inhaling her scent to confirm she was real. Sophia, recognizing her father, settled down into a soft whimper. He checked her fingers, her toes, scanning her for injuries with obsessive precision. "She's warm," Lorenzo murmured half to himself. He looked up at Elena, his eyes narrowing again. "She's fed. She's clean." "I bought formula," Elena said, rubbing her bruised neck. "I kept her warm. I had to lower her fever." Lorenzo walked over to a wet bar, poured himself a glass of water, and didn't drink it. He just stared at the trembling maid. "You expect me to believe that you found the most protected child in New York City?" "My security team is the best in the world. They said she was taken by a tactical team. Pros." "Then your security team is lying to you," Elena said, finding a sudden surge of courage. "Or they're incompetent." The guards by the door stiffened. Nobody spoke to Lorenzo Moretti like that. "I found her in a dumpster," Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. "Behind this hotel, in the alley off 44th. She was wrapped in a ruined cashmere blanket and lying on a pile of cardboard. It was 3 a.m. It was freezing rain. If I hadn't walked by, if I hadn't heard her," Elena's voice cracked, "she would be dead, Mr. Moretti. The cold would have taken her before sunrise." Lorenzo studied her face. He was a man who made his living reading liars. He looked for the twitch of an eye, the sweat on the brow. Elena was terrified, yes, but her eyes were clear. She was telling a truth so horrific, he didn't want to believe it. "A dumpster." He repeated the word, tasting like ash in his mouth. "Check the security cameras of the alley," Elena challenged him. "Check the time stamps. I was leaving my shift. I didn't have a tactical team. I had a bus pass and $60 in tips." Lorenzo pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. "Marcus, pull the footage from the Chatsworth rear service alley, Tuesday morning, 0300 hours. Send it to me now." He hung up and stared at Elena. "If you are lying, I will peel the skin from your bones." "And if I'm telling the truth?" Elena asked. "Will you apologize for choking me?" Lorenzo stepped closer, his scent of expensive cologne and gun oil filling her senses. "If you are telling the truth, Elena Vance, then you are the only person in this city I can trust. And that is a very dangerous position to be in." His phone buzzed. Lorenzo looked at the screen. He watched the grainy black and white footage. He saw a figure in a maid's coat walking in the rain. He saw her stop. He saw her dive into the dumpster. He saw her pull out the bundle. He saw her wrap the baby in her own coat, exposing herself to the freezing sleet, and run. He watched it 3 times. The air in the room changed. The aggression didn't leave Lorenzo, but it shifted targets. He wasn't mad at Elena anymore. He was consumed by a cold, dark rage directed at someone else. Someone inside my house threw my daughter away like garbage. It wasn't a kidnapping for ransom. They didn't want money. They wanted Sophia dead, and they wanted it to look like she just disappeared. Lorenzo looked at Elena, really looked at her. He saw the frayed cuffs of her coat, the dark circles under her eyes, the cheap shoes. "You kept her for 2 days," he said quietly. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "I was scared," Elena admitted. "I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. If I went to the cops, they would have blamed me. Or worse. I thought if I gave her back to the system, the people who hurt her might find her again. I wanted to give her to you. Only you." Lorenzo walked over to the sofa and sat down, placing Sophia gently on his lap. He looked tired, mortal. "You saved her," he said. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. "You saved my life." "I should go," Elena said, edging towards the door. "You have her now. I just want to go home." Lorenzo laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Go home, Elena. Do you understand what just happened? You just walked into the middle of a war." "I don't want a war," she pleaded. "I just want my life back." "You don't have a life anymore," Lorenzo said ruthlessly. "Think. Someone close to me tried to kill my daughter. They failed because of you. If I let you walk out that door, you'll be dead within the hour. Whoever did this is watching. They know someone found her. They will come for you to tie up the loose end." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "So, what, you're going to kill me?" "No." Lorenzo stood up. "I'm going to hire you." "What? My daughter needs a nanny. Her last one is obviously unavailable." Lorenzo's eyes flashed with a dark promise of violence toward the previous staff. "You are the only person who has proven you will protect her with your life. You wrapped her in your coat while you froze. You faced me down to save her." "I'm not a nanny," Elena stammered. "I'm a maid." "You are now whatever I say you are," Lorenzo declared. "Pack your things mentally, because you aren't going back to your apartment. You're coming to live at the estate." "I can't just move in with the Mafia," Elena cried. Lorenzo stepped into her personal space, his dark eyes boring into hers. "You have 2 choices, Elena. Walk out that door and take your chances with the killers who threw a baby in a dumpster, or come with me live under my protection and help me find the monster who did this." Elena looked at Sophia, who was chewing on her fist, safe and warm. Then she looked at Lorenzo. He was terrifying, yes. But beneath the monster, she saw a father who was just as scared as she was. "Fine," Elena whispered. "I'll go." Lorenzo nodded. "Good choice. Welcome to the family." The ride to the Moretti estate took an hour, but to Elena it felt like traveling to a different planet. They traveled in a convoy of 3 armored black SUVs. Elena sat in the middle vehicle, sandwiched between Lorenzo and the car seat, where Sophia slept. The estate was located in the wealthy hills of Oyster Bay. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress masked as a mansion. 12-foot iron gates swung open, revealing a winding driveway lined with ancient oak trees. The house itself was a sprawling structure of grey stone and dark slate, beautiful but impsing like a castle designed to withstand a siege. When the car stopped, a team of servants and guards was already waiting on the steps. Lorenzo got out first. He didn't wait for a chauffeur to open the door for Elena. He opened it himself, offering a hand. Elena took it. His grip was firm, his palm warm and rough. "Stay close to me," he murmured as they walked up the steps. "Eyes down. Don't speak unless spoken to." They entered the grand foyer. It was breathtaking, a dual staircase, a crystal chandelier the size of a car, and floors polished to a mirror shine. But the atmosphere was suffocating. The staff maids in crisp uniforms, butlers in tails, stood in a rigid line. They didn't look like employees. They looked like soldiers. An older woman with a severe bun and a face like a pinched lemon stepped forward. "Mr. Moretti," she said, her voice tight. "We were relieved to hear of the child's recovery. It is a miracle." Lorenzo stopped. He stared at the woman. "Is it Mrs. Rossi?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Yes, sir. Of course, sir." Mrs. Rossi's eyes flickered to Eleanor. "And who is this?" "This is Eleanor," Lorenzo announced, his voice carrying through the hall. "She is the new head nanny. She answers only to me. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Is that clear?" A ripple of shock went through the line of staff. A girl in a ragged coat. "Head nanny crystal clear, sir," Mrs. Rossi said, though her eyes were filled with venom. Lorenzo led Elena up the stairs past the gaping staff. He showed her to the nursery wing. It was a suite of rooms larger than Elena's entire apartment building. "This is Sophia's room." Lorenzo gestured to a nursery filled with toys that had never been played with. "And this," he opened a connecting door, "is yours." Elena's room was stunning. A canopy bed, a private balcony, a bathroom with a soaking tub. On the bed there were boxes. "Clothes," Lorenzo said. "My assistant estimated your size. Burn what you are wearing. You represent the family now." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Eleanor." "Yes, trust no one in this house," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The person who took Sophia, they had a key. They had the codes. They are still here." With that chilling warning, he left, locking the door from the outside. Eleanor wasn't a guest. She was a prisoner in a golden cage. The first week was a blur of tension. Elena quickly realized that the staff hated her. To them, she was an interloper, a street rat who had charmed the boss. They would whisper when she walked into the kitchen to get milk. They would stop talking the moment she entered a room. Mrs. Rossi, the housekeeper, was the worst. She would inspect Elena's work with a magnifying glass. "The baby's socks are mismatched," Mrs. Rossi would sneer. "Is this how they dress children in the slums?" Sophia kicked them off. Elena would reply, calmly refusing to be baited. "She's happy. That's what matters." Lorenzo was rarely seen. He spent his days in his study or away on business, which Elena assumed meant violence. But every night at 8 p.m. sharp, he would come to the nursery. He would sit in the armchair in the corner and watch Elena feed Sophia. He wouldn't speak much. He would just watch. It was unnerving. Elena felt his dark eyes, tracking her every movement, the way she burped the baby, the way she hummed soft lullabies, the way she gently combed Sophia's hair. One rainy Tuesday, a week after her arrival, the tension broke. Elena was in the nursery, rocking Sophia. The baby was teething and fussy. Eleanor started singing a song her mother used to sing to her before the foster system took her. It was a soft, sad folk song about a boat on the ocean. She didn't hear the door open. When she turned to put Sophia in the crib, Lorenzo was standing there. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked exhausted. "You have a beautiful voice," he said softly. Elena jumped, nearly dropping the blanket. I didn't know you were there. Lorenzo walked into the room. He didn't look at the baby. He looked at Elena. He reached out and touched a stray curl of hair that had fallen onto her forehead. The touch was electric. Elena's breath hitched. Why did you save her? Lorenzo asked, his voice raw. You could have walked away. No one would have known. I couldn't, Elena whispered. She was alone. I know what it's like to be thrown away. Lorenzo's hand lingered on her face. His thumb grazed her cheekbone. For a second, the distance between them vanished. He wasn't the Don. She wasn't the Maid. They were just two people bound by a miracle. He leaned in, his eyes searching hers. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Was he going to kiss her? Suddenly, Sophia let out a sharp, pained cry from the crib. The moment shattered. Elena spun around. What's wrong, sweetie? Sophia was coughing, her face turning red. Elena picked her up. She's choking. No, she wasn't eating anything. Elena looked at the crib. Tucked under the mattress where Elena had just laid her down was a small plush teddy bear. But it wasn't one of Sophia's bears. Elena grabbed it. It felt heavy. She squeezed it. A puff of white powder erupted from the seams hanging in the air. The smell hit Elena instantly. Bitter almonds. Don't breathe, Elena screamed. She threw the bear across the room and covered Sophia's face with her shoulder, diving to the floor. What is it? Lorenzo roared, his gun already in his hand, scanning the room for an intruder. The bear. Elena gasped, coughing as the dust settled. It's poisoned. It smells like cyanide. Someone put it in the crib. Lorenzo's face went from confused to apocalyptic. He looked at the innocent-looking toy lying on the rug. He pressed a button on the wall, the lockdown alarm. Sirens began to wail throughout the estate. Red lights flashed. They're here, Lorenzo said, his voice devoid of humanity. They are in the house right now. He grabbed Elena and Sophia, pulling them into the corner of the room, shielding them with his own body. Stay behind me, he ordered. Tonight the walls are going to run red. The attack on the baby hadn't stopped. It had just begun. And this time, Elena was right in the crossfire. The sirens cut through the silence of the estate like a scream. Lorenzo kicked the nursery door shut and engaged the deadbolt. He hit the floor, covering Elena and Sophia with his body, as heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway outside. Stay down, he commanded, his voice tight with controlled chaos. Do not move until I say the words clear. Elena huddled on the Persian rug, clutching Sophia so tight her knuckles turned white. The baby was crying, startled by the noise, but alive. Alive. That was all that mattered. The scent of bitter almond cyanide still lingered faintly in the air, a ghostly reminder of how close they had come to death. Outside, the shouting began. Secure the perimeter. Nobody leaves, lock all exits. Lorenzo stood up slowly, his gun leveled at the door. He tapped his earpiece. Marcus, status. House is sealed, boss, Marcus, the head of security, replied, his voice crackling in the silence. We're doing a sweep. Who is the target? Me, Lorenzo said coldly, and my daughter. Get the medical team to the nursery. Full hazmat protocol. Someone put a cyanide device in the crib. 10 minutes later, the room was swarming with men. A private doctor examined Sophia, confirming she hadn't inhaled enough of the dust to be harmed. Elena was checked too. She was shaken but physically fine. Lorenzo didn't get checked. He was pacing the room like a caged tiger, his fury radiating in waves that made his own men flinch. He picked up the teddy bear with a pair of tongs. sealing it in an evidence bag. "This didn't come from a store," Lorenzo said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "This is a custom job. Pressure trigger. It was placed after the room was cleaned this morning." He turned to his men. "Bring everyone. Every maid, every cook, every gardener. Bring them to the Great Hall. Now." The Great Hall looked like a courtroom in hell. 30 staff members stood in lines, trembling. Mrs. Rossi, the housekeeper, looked pale. The younger maids were weeping. Lorenzo stood at the front, flanked by his guards. He held the evidence bag up. "Someone in this room put this in my daughter's crib," he announced. "You have one chance to confess. If you confess now, I will make your death quick. If I have to find you, I will take days." Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. Elena stood off to the side, holding Sophia. She watched the faces. She had grown up in the foster system. She knew how to read fear. She knew the difference between the fear of an innocent person and the fear of the guilty. Most of the staff looked confused and scared. Mrs. Rossi looked indignant. But there was one person, a young maid named Clara. She wasn't looking at Lorenzo. She was looking at the floor, and her hands were twisting her apron so hard the fabric was tearing. She was sweating even though the hall was drafty. Elena stepped forward. "It's her." Every head turned. Lorenzo looked at Elena, then followed her gaze to Clara. "Her?" Lorenzo asked. "Look at her hands," Elena said softly. Clara gasped and tried to run. She didn't get 2 steps before Marcus tackled her to the marble floor. "Get off me!" Clara screamed. "I didn't mean to. They made me—" Lorenzo walked over to her. He signaled Marcus to lift her up. "Who is they?" Lorenzo asked. "I don't know," Clara sobbed. "A man. He came to my sister's school. He showed me photos of her. He said if I didn't put the bear in the crib, he would take her. He gave me the bear. He said it was just a sleeping powder. I didn't know it was poison. I swear." Lorenzo stared at her. His expression was unreadable. "You traded my daughter's life for your sister's," he said. "I had no choice," Clara wailed. Lorenzo pulled his gun. The sound of the safety clicking off echoed through the hall. Elena flinched. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. This was the world she had entered. Justice here wasn't a gavel. It was a bullet. But Lorenzo didn't shoot. He lowered the gun. "Lock her in the cellar," he ordered Marcus. "We need to know who the man was. Get a sketch artist. Get every detail. If she's telling the truth about her sister, find the girl and secure her. If she's lying, kill them both." As they dragged the screaming maid away, Lorenzo turned to the rest of the staff. "Get out of my sight, all of you. You're fired. I don't trust a single one of you." The hall cleared in seconds. Lorenzo turned to Elena. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him looking hollowed out. "You were right," he said. "Again." "She was just a pawn," Elena said, rocking Sophia. "Whoever is doing this, they know where you live. They know your staff. They can get to anyone." "Which is why we aren't staying here," Lorenzo said abruptly. "Pack a bag, Elena. Just the essentials. We leave in 10 minutes. Where are we going?" Lorenzo looked at the dark windows, his eyes scanning the night for snipers. "Somewhere off the grid. Somewhere where I am not the Don, and you are not the nanny. Where we are just ghosts." The car was not a luxury SUV this time. It was a battered, nondescript Ford pickup truck with rusted wheel wells. Lorenzo drove, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt he had pulled from a dusty storage box. He looked less like a Mafia boss and more like a rugged construction worker. Elena sat in the passenger seat, Sophia asleep in the back, in a securely strapped car seat. They had been driving for 4 hours, heading north into the dense wilderness of the Adirondack Mountains. The city lights were long gone, replaced by endless walls of pine trees and a sky choked with stars. "You can sleep," Lorenzo said, breaking the silence that had lasted for miles. "I can't," Elena replied, staring out at the darkness. "Every time I close my eyes, I see that bear." Lorenzo tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "I should have checked the room myself. I got complacent." "You can't do everything," Elena said. "You're human, Lorenzo." He glanced at her. It was the first time she had used his first name without Mr. Moretti. It sounded intimate in the small cab of the truck. "In my world, being human gets you killed," he muttered. They arrived at the safe house just before dawn. It was a log cabin tucked deep in the woods, miles from the nearest paved road. It overlooked a frozen lake, the moonlight reflecting off the ice. It was beautiful and isolated. "No internet here," Lorenzo warned as he killed the engine. "No cell service, no landline. We are invisible." They carried the sleeping baby inside. The cabin was cold, smelling of cedar and wood smoke. Lorenzo expertly started a fire in the massive stone hearth, while Elena found clean sheets and made a bed for Sophia in a sturdy wooden crib that looked hand-carved. For the next 2 days, life was strangely terrifyingly normal. There were no guards, no maids, just Lorenzo and Elena. Lorenzo chopped wood outside, his breath misting in the cold air. Elena cooked simple meals with the canned goods, stocked in the pantry. They ate at a small wooden table, Sophia babbling happily between them. It felt like playing house, but the gun tucked into the back of Lorenzo's waistband was a constant reminder of reality. On the third night, a blizzard rolled in. The wind howled around the cabin, rattling the windows. Sophia was asleep. Lorenzo poured 2 glasses of whiskey and sat on the rug in front of the roaring fire. He gestured for Elena to join him. She sat down, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. "Who is doing this, Lorenzo?" she asked, taking a sip of the burning liquid. "You know, don't you?" Lorenzo stared into the flames. "Vincent Vitali. He's the head of the rival family. 5 years ago, we had a peace treaty. We divided the territories. But Vincent is greedy. He doesn't just want territory. He wants to wipe out the Moretti bloodline." "But a baby?" Elena asked, horrified. "Why target a baby? Because he knows he can't kill me." Lorenzo said, his voice hard. "I'm too well guarded, so he wants to break me. If he kills Sophia, he knows I will lose my mind. I will become reckless, and then he can kill me." He took a long drink. "Sophia's mother, Isabella. She didn't die in childbirth, Elena." Elena's heart stopped. "What? She was killed?" Lorenzo said, the pain in his voice jagged and raw. "A car bomb, meant for me. She took the car that morning to go shopping for the nursery. I wasn't there." He looked at his hands. "I failed her, and now I'm failing her daughter." Elena moved before she thought. She reached out and took his hand. "You are not failing her," she said fiercely. "Look at her. She is safe. She is warm. She is loved. You are doing everything a father can do." Lorenzo looked up at her. The firelight danced in his dark eyes. The walls he had built around his heart, the cold Mafia exterior, seemed to crumble for just a moment. "I'm not doing it alone," he said softly. "I have you." He turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with a tension that had been building since that first night in the hallway. "Elena," he whispered, "you shouldn't be here. You deserve a better life than running from killers." "I don't want to be anywhere else," Elena admitted, her voice trembling. Lorenzo leaned in. He hesitated for a second, giving her a chance to pull away. She didn't. He closed the distance. His lips brushed hers, tentative at first, then demanding. It was a kiss tasted of whiskey and desperation. It was the kiss of a man who had forgotten what gentleness felt like, and a woman who had never known what safety felt like. Elena's hands tangled in his hair. Lorenzo pulled her closer, his strong arms wrapping around her waist, anchoring her to him. For a few minutes, the blizzard outside didn't exist. The Vitali family didn't exist. There was only the heat of the fire and the heat of his body. Crack. The sound wasn't a log popping in the fire. It was the shattering of glass. A split second later, a bullet tore through the whiskey bottle, sitting on the table, spraying glass shards everywhere. Lorenzo threw Elena to the floor instantly. "Down!" he roared. Another shot rang out. Thwack! It embedded itself in the log wall, inches from where Lorenzo's head had been. "Snipers!" Lorenzo yelled, crawling toward the gun he had left on the mantel. "Get to Sofia. Get to the bathroom. It has no windows." Elena scrambled on her hands and knees toward the bedroom, her heart screaming in her chest. The peace was over. They had been found. Lorenzo grabbed his rifle and kicked the table over for cover. "How?" he shouted into the darkness. "How did they find us?" Then he saw it, on the floor near Elena's purse, which had spilled open in the chaos. Her phone. It was on, and the GPS location service was blinking. The phone, Lorenzo realized with a sick feeling. We didn't take the battery out. Outside, the roar of snowmobiles grew louder. Bright lights cut through the trees. They weren't just snipers. It was an assault team. Lorenzo racked the slide of his rifle. He looked at the bedroom door where Elena and Sofia were hiding. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Then he turned to the shattered window and opened fire. The cabin exploded into chaos. The sound of automatic gunfire shredded the serene winter silence, bullets tearing through the wood like it was paper. Lorenzo was a one-man army. He moved with terrifying precision, firing through the windows, taking down the silhouettes moving in the snow. But he was pinned down. Every time he popped up to fire, 3 more shooters responded. "Elena!" he shouted over the roar of the assault. "Stay in the bathroom. Do not come out." Inside the small bathroom, Elena crouched in the bathtub, her body curled over Sofia. The baby was screaming, the noise deafening in the tiled space. Elena's hands were shaking, but her mind was strangely clear. They are going to kill him, she realized. There are too many of them. And once he's dead, they will come for us. She looked around the bathroom. A razor, a bottle of shampoo. Useless. Then her eyes landed on the small, high window. It was too small for a person, but she saw a red metal box mounted on the wall near the ceiling. An emergency flare kit. Elena stood up, grabbed the heavy porcelain lid of the toilet tank, and smashed the glass of the box. She grabbed the flare gun. It was loaded with a single shell. Crash! The front door of the cabin was kicked in. The cold wind rushed in, followed by the heavy thud of boots. "Cease fire!" a voice bellowed. The shooting stopped. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Elena cracked the bathroom door open just an inch. Through the gap she saw the living room. It was wrecked. Furniture was overturned, glass covered the floor. Lorenzo was on his knees. He was bleeding from a graze on his shoulder, his rifle empty on the floor. 2 men had their guns pointed at his head. Standing in front of him was a man in a long camel hair coat. He had silver hair and a face that looked like it had been chiseled out of ice. Vincent Vitali. "Lorenzo." Vincent smiled, stepping over the shattered remains of the whiskey bottle. "You always were hard to kill. Like a cockroach." "Go to hell, Vincent." Lorenzo spat blood trickling down his forehead. "I'll send you there first," Vincent said. He looked around. "And where is the little princess and the nanny? I want them here. I want you to watch them die before I put a bullet in your brain." Lorenzo didn't look at the bathroom door. He stared Vincent in the eye. "They aren't here. I sent them away hours ago." Vincent laughed. "Liar. The car seat is in the truck. They are here." He gestured to one of his men. "Check the back rooms." The gunman turned toward the bathroom. Lorenzo lunged. Even on his knees he was fast. He tackled the gunman, grabbing for his weapon. Bang! The gun went off. Lorenzo cried out, collapsing back onto the floor, clutching his side. "Stop playing games," Vincent sighed, aiming his own golden pistol at Lorenzo's heart. "Goodbye, Don Moretti." He pulled back the hammer. Whoosh! A blinding red light erupted from the bathroom doorway. Elena stood there, the flare gun smoking in her hand. She hadn't aimed for Vincent. She had aimed for the massive, dry stag head mounted above the fireplace, directly above Vincent. The flare hit the taxidermy, and the old, dusty fur ignited instantly. The fire spread up the wall in a microsecond, catching the curtains. But the distraction was what mattered. Vincent flinched, shielding his eyes from the sudden, blinding magnesium glare. That split second was all Lorenzo needed. Ignoring the bullet in his side, Lorenzo rolled, grabbed the shard of the broken whiskey bottle from the floor, and drove it upward. He didn't need a gun. He slammed the glass into Vincent's thigh, severing the femoral artery. Vincent screamed, dropping his gun. Lorenzo grabbed the falling pistol mid-air. Bang! Bang! The 2 henchmen dropped before they could realize what happened. Vincent Vitali fell to the floor, clutching his leg, blood pumping out in a dark rhythm. The fire was roaring now, climbing the walls. The cabin was turning into an inferno. Lorenzo stood over his enemy. He didn't look triumphant. He looked exhausted. "You wanted to burn my house down," Lorenzo said, his voice barely audible over the crackling flames. "Now you can burn with this one. He turned and ran to the bathroom. Elena was already there, clutching Sophia. She looked at Lorenzo, her eyes wide with terror and adrenaline. "You're shot," she gasped. "I'm fine," Lorenzo gritted out. "We have to move. Now!" He grabbed Elena with his good arm, shielding her and the baby as they ran through the burning living room, stepping over the body of the man who had tried to destroy their lives. They burst out into the snow, the cold air hitting their lungs like knives. Behind them, the cabin was a torch against the night sky. As they stumbled toward the truck, headlights crested the hill. A convoy of black SUVs tore down the driveway. Elena froze. More of them. Lorenzo looked at the lead car. No. He let out a breath he had been holding for days. "That's Marcus." The cavalry had arrived, but they were too late for the war. The war was over. The Maid and the monster had won it alone. The Moretti estate had changed. The heavy drapes were pulled back, letting sunlight flood the great hall. The staff was new, vetted by Eleanor personally. The fear that used to hang in the air was gone, replaced by the soft sounds of a piano playing in the music room. Elena sat in the garden, watching Sophia crawling on a blanket in the grass. The baby was laughing, chasing a butterfly. Elena wasn't wearing a maid's uniform. She was wearing a silk sundress, her hair loose and shining. "She's getting fast," a deep voice said behind her. Elena smiled and turned. Lorenzo stood there. He had healed. The shadows under his eyes were gone. He looked younger, lighter. He sat down on the grass beside her, something the old Lorenzo would never have done. "Marcus tells me the Vitali family has officially dissolved," Lorenzo said. "Their territories have been absorbed. There is no one left to challenge us." "That's good," Elena said softly. "Peace is good." Lorenzo looked at her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's breath hitched. "You saved my daughter," Lorenzo said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life. You saved my soul, Elena. I told you once that you were just the nanny. I was lying." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, a massive, flawless diamond, surrounded by rubies. The family colors. "I don't want a nanny," Lorenzo whispered. "I want a partner. I want a queen. I want a mother for Sophia, who will fight for her with fire and blood." He took her hand. "Elena Vance, will you marry me?" Elena looked at the ring, then at the man who had once terrified her. She saw the scars on his hands from the night at the cabin. She saw the love in his eyes that was deeper than any ocean. She looked at Sophia, who had stopped crawling and was watching them with wide, happy eyes. Elena smiled, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Lorenzo." He kissed her right there in the sunlight while his guards turned their backs to give them privacy. The poor maid who found a baby in a dumpster didn't just save a life that night. She found a destiny she never dared to dream of. She wasn't a maid anymore. She was the mother of the heir. She was the wife of the Don. She was the queen. And that is the incredible story of Elena and the Mafia boss. From the freezing alleyway to the highest throne of the underworld, Elena proved that true power isn't about money or guns. It's about the courage to protect the innocent. She walked into the lion's den and tamed the beast not with force, but with love. Lorenzo Moretti thought he was invincible, but he learned that a father's love and a mother's courage are the only forces that truly matter. What would you have done if you found that baby in the dumpster? Would you have walked away? Or would you have risked it all, like Elena? Let me know in the comments below. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this with a friend who loves a dramatic romance, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss our next crazy story. Thanks for listening.